longtime client, founder of the GSD Mode podcast, top realtor, my man Joshua Smith. Tell me a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
The biggest growth moments I've ever experienced. I've never really grown from succeeding. I've grown from failure.
So how do you combine your drive and ambition, not neglect the importance of being a great husband and being there for your 3 growing kids?
I know it's easy to look on social media and think everybody's got their quote unquote shit together, but I've never met a human being that actually has their shit together. And it was probably the most costly mistake I've ever made in business was it.
All right, fam. I am so excited. We have got our first ever podcast episode here for the Ultimate Life being recorded as I speak these words. So put this in your archive, save it in the historical documents. But I've got probably the most perfect guest for this podcast. It's my good friend, longtime client, founder of the GSD Mode podcast, top realtor. I'll go into his specific introduction. My man, Joshua Smith. I'll get into your stuff, but Josh, real quick, thank you so much for being here.
I'm truly honored. I'm excited. You've had such a massive impact on every aspect of my life, and truly honored to be here and to be jamming with you.
Dope. So, as I mentioned very briefly, Josh Smith here has been a client of mine as of this recording, probably for about 7 years now. And I've had my Ultimate Life coaching business for about 8 years. So he came in pretty early on. I want to say that he made the craziest risk and also possibly one of the best, hopefully, investments ever in jamming with me and trusting me as a professional coach, specifically on his mindset. But today is going to be a conversation both on Josh's journey, what he does on a daily basis as a high performer, both as a serial entrepreneur and as a father. And then also, and I was talking to Josh about this before we began recording, is I want to talk about how he thinks. So while I think it is important that we focus on what people do, their habits, their daily practices, more deeply on this podcast, I want to dive into the minds of some of the most elite entrepreneurs on the planet. And that's really my goal with this. So Josh, let me get into your bio real quick. For those who don't know, he is a realtor in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as a serial entrepreneur. Josh is one of the top realtors in the world, along with running many other successful companies. So here's some quick facts about Josh. Number 1, he's married to an amazing woman. What's up, Amanda? Shout out to you. Has 3 extremely awesome children. He's voted top 30th realtor in America by the Wall Street Journal, NAR's 30 under 30 finalist. He sells more than 1 home a day. Like, that's just crazy. So there's 365 days in a year. This brother is doing way more than 365. He's top 1% of realtors worldwide. He owns and operates the #1 real estate podcast in the industry, GSD Mode. If you have not seen the podcast, go search it right now. Download it. It's epic. He's a co-owner of a real estate software company called Perfect Storm. Successfully coaches and mentors over 1,000 realtors yearly all over the US and Canada. So really cool mastermind program. I get to jump on even once a month and talk to them. And he's the co-owner in many other companies in many other industries, including healthcare, supplements, health and fitness, and more. So, Josh, let's dive into it. You got a dope resume, but I think behind every successful resume is a really triumphant story of failure, success, redemption, regret. So if you would indulge me a bit, tell me a little bit about your journey to where you are today, both as a businessman, now you're a father of 3, but walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a lot of times I'll say that, and don't get me wrong, like having all the accolades, the awards, the accolades, that stuff's nice. I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm not proud of some of the things that I've achieved, but that's not what I'm most proud of on this journey. What I'm most proud of by far on this journey is all the adversity I had to overcome to get to where I'm at. And you start reflecting back on, at least for me, my journey's been filled with a lot more downs than it has been ups. I mean, I've definitely, again, created some success and hopefully we'll create a lot more. But on that path and journey to success, man, there's so much hardship that is faced and so much adversity that you have to be prepared to go out there and face and push through, and who you metamorphosize into through pushing through that hardship, at least for me, that's what I'm most proud of. And like, even if I lost everything today, right, just the fact of that confidence, that knowledge, the skills that you obtain from pushing through that adversity. It's funny when I first got into entrepreneurship, because right out of the gate, I was like, all right, like, I need to go learn from the best. So I did everything I possibly could to, shadow and be around the best of the best. And in the very beginning, I used to put them on pedestals. I used to sit there and think, oh, they have some special genetic code that maybe I didn't have, or, right. And, but then very quickly, as you spend more time with them and then you become one yourself, you quickly realize that they're just, regular people, human beings like everybody else. They are just those that are willing to push through the insane storms, never quit, never give up, but then
Mhm.
utilize those, storms, if you will, that adversity, those, pain points. God does not reserve problems just for a select few. We're all going to face insane amounts of problems. Life is not problem free. It's not pain free. But they're ones that not only push through it, but use that pain as the amazing teachers that those experiences are to, again, forge yourself into that better version of yourself. So, my journey began, in my early 20s. I'm, massively depressed at that point in my life, drop out of college. My life, it was like in my earlier years, I had my stuff together, right? Like according to society, I don't want to say I mentally had it together for a long time. I don't even know if I still do. That's why I always, have you on speed dial. But my younger years, I mean, I was, very involved in sports. My father owned and operated gyms. Like, I thought I knew
Hmm.
exactly what my path was. And, we grew up or I grew up in a different era where I was like, okay, like, you were supposed to go to high school, go to college, do the arena. Well, I jump into college and I started having a lot of uncertainty. I always thought I was going to go into the gym business, take over the gyms for my dad. Well, my dad ended up selling those gyms and moving 2,000 miles away. So,
Hmm.
now here I am, kind of alone, if you will, and thinking, okay, well, the path that I thought I was always going to go on is, now disrupted. So then I'm doing this whole college thing, but I'm like, dude, just something internally was just like, this is not the place for you. So I ended up dropping out of college. And at that time there was, a lot of naysayers, a lot of haters, a lot of, and I let a lot of that get to me, and it just, just spiraled out of control and led to, and there was a lot of other things that I won't get into here. It really just came down to me adopting a victimhood mindset, blaming everybody else for how my situation in life was turning out, and that led down to a path of, massive alcohol use and being drunk every day by noon, and led to massive depression, to the point where, I was contemplating suicide, having suicidal thoughts daily, to my low moment where I started planning out my suicide. And
Wow.
and that was my low moment where it just really, because it became real. Yeah, right. So I planned it out and I was getting ready to, okay, getting to that point where, okay, you plan it out, now you're getting ready to go execute on it. And call it God, call it universe, whatever your belief system is. I just had this strong internal voice saying, hey, like, let's try a different path. You've been going down this path. Let's just try a different path, see what's out there. If this other path doesn't work, you can always come back here. And again, whatever you want to say, like, I just think it honestly just scared the living out of me. I had to get to that low moment and to wake me up and create enough fear to just the fact that I allowed myself to get to that low moment. So then at that point, and that's where I look at, okay, that's where my success journey began, because then I became very serious about creating success. Now, at that time, I didn't know what success meant. Yeah, right. But I was like, what's the opposite of fulfillment, or what's the opposite of depression? It's fulfillment. And I didn't know what would create fulfillment in my life, but I went on the seeking journey, right, on that path journey. Now, then from there, though, I was like, okay, I don't know what I want, but I identified two areas of my life that I was most unhappy with in the moment. Which, number one, I was broke as a joke, making $10 an hour. So I was like, okay, if I can figure out a way to be more financially secure, I think that will bring some fulfillment. But then from there, I also let my body completely go. Growing up, I mean, I competed in wrestling and played sports and competed in bodybuilding, and like even in my teenage years, competed in teenage Mr. Michigan bodybuilding competitions. Like, I was in great shape, in
Mm.
junior high, high school. Then now, that two chicken breasts and broccoli turned into two double bacon cheeseburgers or two Whoppers. So I just let everything go, and I became morbidly
Mm.
obese, and I was just
Wow.
sick and tired of my body, sick and tired of my energy level. So I was like, okay, hey, look, I don't know if this will for sure create fulfillment, but I'm pretty positive if I can turn around my financial situation, and get back into great shape, that will at least make my situation better and be on that path to fulfillment. So that's when it began. So then So I started seeking, different jobs that could allow me to back to making money. So I was at the hospitals at that time as a nurse's aide. I jumped back into health club sales because I knew I didn't have an income cap at that point. A year later, that led me into real estate, and got my health in order, in place. And that's just kind of what set the trajectory for the rest of the journey.
That's amazing. And I hope you don't mind as you're talking, if you're listening to the podcast, you can't see it. So I would hop onto YouTube, be sure you watch it because I'm taking notes. So if you see my pen going, I'm paying attention. But there were just a couple of things that you said that I want to highlight because I think for anyone listening who maybe is at a low moment right now, you said use pain as a teacher. And sometimes in that low moment, it created enough fear for you that you're like, all right, I got to get out of it. Sometimes we have to get to that place. I forgot who said the quote, but it's either desperation or inspiration is the thing that's going to move you forward. And it sounded like you were at a place of desperation. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now that the other thing I want to highlight, you said something really significant here. The opposite of depression for you was fulfillment. And even though you didn't know exactly what would fulfill you, you kind of reverse engineered it. You're like, well, what am I most unhappy about right now? And you said it was your finances and your body. Now, if you could just speak to the mindset, let's start with the body, because I know there's a lot of folks who they maybe struggle with weights, or maybe they even just struggle to commit to the workouts or exercise to go from morbidly obese. Would you even mind sharing like how much you weighed at the time?
Yeah. My heaviest was 276 pounds. So to put that in context, I'm 5'10", so I'm not super tall, right? So I didn't have my body fat checked at the highest, which I wished I would, but I mean, I
Wow.
was definitely morbidly obese. I was probably close to 40% body fat.
Yeah. And so how did you stick with that? To go from morbidly obese to obviously now you're not morbidly obese, but walk me a little bit if you can recall the mindset, the journey, maybe some of the struggles as you committed to that.
Yeah, yeah. So, now I had a little bit of maybe upper hand than some do in that situation, just because, I grew up in the gym business. I was very healthy. I just let it go. So I already had the tools of knowing what I needed to do. That doesn't mean it was easy. I always joke and say, just like all things in life, when it comes to creating success, is most things are very simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. You still got to go through the pain of, especially at that moment in my life, it was like, okay, I knew exactly what to do, but the only pleasure really I had at that point in my life was through food and through alcohol, right? So having to give up that instant pleasure and sacrifice that for the long game pleasure. There's a quote I always say, and I still say it to myself in my head multiple times every day because I got to remind myself of this all the time. Because it could be a daily battle and a daily struggle going out there and creating, success or whatever, or making your goals a reality, however anybody defines that, but it's never sacrifice what you want most for what you want in the moment. You know, um,
Mm.
so which at that point of my life, it was the moment to moment pleasures that were creating the most pleasure. Yeah, right. So I had to switch from playing, I guess, the short game to the long game, and push through that. But it's just, there's little hacks that I did, like as an example, like maybe I'm at an event at a party and some food comes out that I really want. Like I'd go lock myself in the bathroom, pull my shirt off, look at myself in the mirror and be like, okay, do I want that of what will create
Mm.
pleasure in the moment? Or am I okay with this? Like looking at my, right. And it was just that constant reminder and, day by day, just pushing through and getting better and better and better with that. And doing everything you possibly can. Look, I've learned at least for me, and I might be different than others, but at least for me, I came to the grips early on, just the understanding of, look, I'm a weak human being with very limited amounts of willpower. But I've found that a lot of people, I think, mistake discipline for meaning willpower. And I look at them as two separate things, right? So willpower is something that we have limited amounts of. And for me, maybe I have less than others or whatever. I don't know if all human beings, I'm guessing that all human beings have some element of a limit. Some might naturally have a little bit stronger than others. But for me, like I know, dude, I'm a weak human being with limited amounts of willpower. So then from there, now, when it comes to discipline, but I need to be very disciplined to create success. So when I break down the word discipline, okay, it's being a disciple to a plan. Well, what is a disciple? A disciple is a committed, loyal follower. So in order for me to create success in any path or journey I'm trying to create success in life, I've just got to be a committed, loyal follower to that plan. So step number one, at least this is my framework for it. Step number one is I get clarity on what is that I want, why I want it, why it's important to me. So I get that clarity of, okay, knowing what I'm making the sacrifices for, because success does not come out of sacrifice. So at least I found for me, unless the reasons as to why I want this outweigh the reasons, the 1,000 reasons that are going to come up as to why not do it, then, I'm not going to push through. So I got to get that extreme clarity of why it's important to me. Then from there, okay, articulate the most effective plan that I can come up with to get me from where I'm at to where I want to go. Then, like I said, then from there, I've just got to be, now that I got the plan, I got clarity. Now it just comes day by day being a committed, loyal follower to that plan. So I just set up and do everything I can to rig my environment to make it as easy as possible to win and as difficult as possible to go out there and lose, with that thing. So how do you do that? Right. Okay. So I started hanging out with people that were into working out and people that were into going to hiking and health and fitness. I stopped hanging out with my friends, at least until I could gain the habits. Stopped hanging out with the friends that just want to sit around and do nothing and eat all day. Right. And then, and I still do this to my, to this day. It's like, okay, my favorite foods that I know I'll just go crush and murder if they're in my pantry. I just make sure they're not around me.
Mm.
Right. So
Yeah.
just doing everything I possibly can to rig that environment to create success. Cause then years later, now I minimized drinking during that time, but I didn't give it up completely. So I didn't give up drinking till, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. Right. But then it came back. It kept resurfacing in my life at low moments or whatever. I kept using that now I was a very high functioning alcoholic, if you will. But there wasn't a day, I mean, from, I don't know, 21 years old till, in my mid 30s, where I didn't have a minimum of 12 drinks a day. And that'd be like a light day.
Wow. Wow.
Most
Okay.
days for me were, 24 plus, right? I'd crack open my first, like, it was hard to make it till noon every day. I built my real estate business, or most of it, while I was, drinking, right? Or while I was drunk.
Mm.
So like I never necessarily got in the way of my performance, but then it got to a point where, okay, there was some limitations that were creating for me in business. Obviously though, it was creating a lot of negative impacts in my marriage and with my kids and
Mm.
with my family. And right. But then from there, as an example, when I decided to quit drinking and I committed to that, same thing. I was like, okay, like, what do I need to do? Okay, here's why I'm going to do this. And here's why I'm committed to making it happen. Then from there, how do I need to rig my environment to go out there and win? Okay, well, I knew immediately I couldn't have any alcohol around the house. So I went and asked for support and talked to my wife about it and, whatever. But then from there, that wasn't enough. I was like, okay, and I just listed all the different environments that if I put myself in this environment, I know I'm too weak of a human being to say no. Or I just knew that there was a probability of me having a weak moment was going to be high at some point and I would cave into that. So all the way to the point where I was like, oh, dude, I can't go eat out. Right. I can't go to any get-togethers, even family birthday parties. If there's alcohol involved, I just could not be around it until I
Mm.
developed the internal strength. Like now I can be around it all day long and it doesn't impact me. Yeah. Right. And it took me about 6 months to develop that internal, to make it enough of a habit and develop that internal strength. But in the beginning, I knew my willpower was going to be too low. So then it's okay, well, how can I still be a disciple to the plan, AKA develop the discipline, based on my environment and my overall, infrastructure internally to go out there and have success with this thing. And that's really the
Yeah.
same framework I follow with everything. Yeah. Right. Whether it's I gotta be focused on this project or whatever the distractions are, instead of being okay. So like, here's another one. So I get up very early, but naturally I'm like I don't know, 5 a.m. wake upper. I'm not like a 2 or 3 a.m. wake upper, right? But this season of my life with 6 businesses and young kids and with the state of the economy, it's like, man, I have to get up at 2 a.m. every single day in order for me to do all the stuff I got to do with business, but then, be there for kids soccer and football and, all that stuff in the evenings. Right. Well, if my alarm clock is next to my bed, I'm too weak to not hit that snooze button. Right. So then from there, like eventually you got to quit. Like I just had to quit battling with myself of, oh, I'm going to be stronger tomorrow. I'm going to be stronger. Again, I don't allow myself to go off of willpower. Right. But I still need to be disciplined, but without willpower. So then it's like, okay, what's been my fix for that? And has been my fix now for years, but it's still like with this one, I still have to have the system in place where it's, okay, get the biggest, loudest alarm clock I possibly can, set up across the room. So when that thing goes off at 2 a.m., I got to sprint out of bed to shut it off. Otherwise it's going to wake up the rest of the family. Well, now I'm awake. So probably me going back to bed is very, very low at that point. Yeah. Right. So for me,
Yeah.
again, it's just, when it comes to that, it's just not relying on willpower, but understanding that I still need discipline and finding discipline through other avenues versus relying on willpower.
And I really appreciate this full breakdown because what I'm hearing again is you recognized very early on. So this is why self-awareness is so critical in order to get to next levels in your leadership. At least this has been my observation of you as well over the past 7 years now, is you are so right. The truth will set you free. So you are so honest with where you are weak. And only when you are honest with where you are weak can you then build your strength, because then all right, I am a very weak-willed person when it comes to willpower. So I have to design discipline because you said you see those as two different things, which I absolutely love. I have to design the discipline, which we call rigging your environment for success. You gave perfect examples of that. That could be both your people, but it could be your physical environment, like your alarm clock being far away, but also your wife being pissed off at you because it's 2 a.m. So you better run and turn that alarm clock off. Because I know if it was me, I'd be like, "What are you doing, Isaac?" Um, that's interesting too because that's very strategic because there's pain associated with that, right? You don't want your wife to be upset that you didn't turn off that alarm clock. So it's not just dependent on you. You're also leveraging the people around you and the joy you want to give them, but then also the discipline you got to create for yourself. So I love that. But I want to just really highlight what you said is I recognized what I was weak at. And I think that's so important because I think the misconception is when folks look at you or you've got a lot of followers both on YouTube and your podcast, they might just automatically be like, oh, well, Josh is just so disciplined. He's just this guy. He's that personality. And they just think that's innate. And then when they hear your story of like, well, he is, and yet he's also not. Because there was one time where he just ate double cheeseburgers all day long and drank, 12 to 24 cans of beer a day. So it wasn't always this way for you. So to the person listening who thinks it's just not my personality, it's not Josh's either. And for most of the entrepreneurs you're going to hear on this podcast, it's not theirs too. They have to design very, very specific routines and things in their environment in order to keep operating in a healthy, positive way. So I appreciate that. Now, you said you wake up at 2 a.m. So what time do you sleep? Because there's no way you're sleeping at midnight and waking up at 2.
No,
Is that
I try to make sure I'm in bed by 8:30 at the latest, every night.
okay?
So,
Okay.
and again, this is just testing certain things. Like, I mean, I've tried, you hear things about like guys like, Donald Trump, even though some might not be fans, whatever, but it's like, okay, you
Yeah.
hear about guys like him that operate very well and get away with 4 hours of sleep a night. Now I've done everything I possibly can, from diet to working with optimal health physicians to try to only be able to have to sleep 4 hours a night. Cause like, okay, man, if I could get 20 hours out of every day, dude, I'm going to do that. But for
Mm,
me, I've found that I need about 6, right?
mm,
Now I've tested it very heavily. Like I don't feel any better on 8 than I do 6, but if I get below 6, I find my mental and physical output definitely to be impacted. Now I can have like a night or two where it's at 5, but really 6.5 is that sweet spot for me where I then have, the best mental and physical output, throughout the day. So I wished I could be a 4 hour, right. But, yeah. And that's why I'm always very careful. I'm glad that you brought that up because I like to be careful about talking about how early I wake up because it's people then automatically assume that to mean, oh, you don't sleep. No, I need sleep.
yeah. You change the time in which you sleep so you get your optimal hours for you. And
Yep.
thanks for bringing that up as well. Some people do really well under 4, some people 6, some people need 8, but you've done your own self-study to figure out what works best for you, which is perfect. So I want to segue a little bit, but I'm also jumping back into your story. So where we left off is, you've overcome a lot of these challenges, both in your physical health, your finances. Obviously, now you're into real estate. So as you're building your real estate business, it sounds like you started as a solo agent. Is that right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So what would you say at what point did things really start to take off for you? Where now you're building a team, you're deciding to start a software company. Like where did all of that start to happen in your story?
Yeah, and for me it was pretty quick, which came with other challenges, right? Because when you have somebody that came from 0 money and that, was broke essentially their whole life to now in your, mid-20s, you're making insane amounts of money. Like there's other problems that creates too, right?
Sure.
But so, I always look at there's 2 things. So number 1, I had the insane burning desire to go out there and be successful. So I mean that fire was burning freaking hot as it possibly could be. Yeah, right.
Mm,
So, it's a combination of that plus finding the right mentor, out of the gate. So I had the right roadmap to execute on. But then, man, I was willing to do whatever it took to go out there and change my situation around as fast as possible. So, year number 1, I mean, I hit the ground running, did 48 deals my first year. Then that led me, I wanted to double going into my second year. But I knew that it was going to be physically impossible with the amount of hours. Now, I'm kind of aging and dating myself here, but that was 2005. So there was no smartphones. There was no DocuSign. Just business took longer at that time, but I went out there and hired my first assistant. that then shot me then to 103 units. Then
Wow.
from there, then that's when I started building out agents on the team. And it took me about 10 years of building the team to be able to step out of operations and production completely. And that was always my vision with it. Now again, just to put things in context, because I think comparison can be a negative thing, because people might compare their first year to my first year. And there's some people that have done more than me my first year, and a lot that haven't. But like understanding that, like I grew up in an entrepreneur family. I grew up with selling memberships and personal training packages so I had a lot of sales training, and I also had training and experience of building teams and sales teams. So when I jumped into real estate, like, yeah, the product interchange, but I knew how to sell. I knew how to prospect. I knew how to market. I knew how to identify niches. I knew a lot of the things that needed to that just transferred over to real estate, and allowed, it was a great foundation, but then I knew how to go out there and build and scale teams, but my, like I mentioned earlier, my dad owned and operated gyms for 30 years, and he did okay with them. He wasn't like massively successful, but like, I did a couple facilities and did good. Right. But the thing that I always respected and loved about that is, like, he could go take vacations. He and my stepmom could go take vacations, and the gym still ran without their day-to-day involvement. So, like, to me, that's what a business is. At least for me, that's what business is about.
Hmm.
Okay, let me build this machine where I can go disappear for 2 weeks, a month, 6 months, and it's running and operating without me physically being there. So I knew, okay, in real estate, even though teams weren't really a huge thing when I first got into business, I knew that that's what I wanted to go out there and create. And again, it took me about 10 years. And part of the reason it took 10 years is, about 2.5 years into this, that's when we hit the great financial crisis, which was the worst housing market crash in recorded history. Now, my business, pivoted and adapted very well with that. But a lot of the accounts that we got into, they wouldn't allow me to delegate them out to other staff. Right. So, and when you have Fannie Mae and these big asset managers, so I kind of got sucked back into day-to-day operations, during that journey. But then, okay, now 10 years, now I'm exited from day-to-day operations, day-to-day production, and now I'm bored. So now here I am in my, early 20s, and I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? I can't keep jumping back in and meddling. That's like, okay, you raise your kids, they're 18, now they're on their own. Like, eventually you got to let them go, you know, figure things out, make their own decisions, and be there
Hmm.
if they need you, but then also let them go out. So, I treat my business in that same way. It's like, okay, I had to let, my executive team and everybody else go out there and flourish and do their things. So I started looking for the next project. And, building up my team for those years, I became very quickly one of the top, realtors and team leaders. Wall Street Journal named me a 30th top realtor in the country. And, so that was that led to a lot of speaking opportunities, and not that I ever got paid to go out there and speak at these, but, led to, I guess, a lot of, peer-to-peer notoriety in the real estate business. I built up a name, I guess, in the industry. And I mean, dude, I was having half a dozen realtors, team leaders, broker owners reaching out a day asking, will you mentor me and coach me? And my response was always, nope, too busy building my own business, right? Like, I don't do that, right? I'll answer any questions that you have, but I'm not going to mentor you. Well, then at that point, I'm like, okay, well, what's the next project? So then I'm like, okay, to build what I built, like how to become good at real estate, also how to become a good coach, to coach up my agents to get them rock and roll and producing. Plus, I enjoyed it. Plus, there was demand there. So I'm like, okay, that will make sense. Let me jump into the coaching space, in addition to, because now I still have that real estate team, then I have a real estate franchising company, software company, and the coaching company still, but that led into the coaching, which then is led into other things, right? So the coaching, once I launched the coaching, then I saw a big demand for the software, which led into that, and which is strategically led to some of these other partnerships.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing then is you paid attention to essentially what people wanted around you. Now, obviously, in combination with what you enjoyed, because you said you loved coaching up your agents, but there was a lot of demand on you to mentor and coach. And your question was, well, what's the next project? People seem to want this. I enjoy this. Marry the two. Is that kind of what happened there in that thought
Yeah.
process?
Yeah. And again, this goes back to just self-awareness. Like, I'm not pretending or trying to be Henry Ford or Elon Musk. Right. That, like,
Right.
Henry Ford, what's his famous quote? If I'd ask people what they wanted, they said a faster horse, right? Like, look, dude, like, I'm not that guy. Yeah. Right. So, for me, yeah, I look for, okay, like, what am I good at? Where's their demand? And also like, am I passionate about it?
Mm,
And is there like, okay, like with my software company, um, I saw a niche in there that was very underserved in the market, but with also a product that I knew, that spoke to my strengths, that I also enjoyed, that there was also demand for. So for me, that those are the niches that I play in when it comes to, creation of business, right? So I'm not trying to give people something that they don't know they want, because I'm not, again, Henry Ford or Elon Musk. I'm not. Yeah, I'm a college dropout. Well, I'm sure those guys were too, but I'm not trying to. I'm not at their level of brilliance by any stretch of the imagination. So for me, it's just that's my formula. Again, is okay. What do I know? What aligns with my skill set? What am I passionate about? Where is their demand and a need, in that market niche for?
yeah. Well, and so this is often what I might call the learning moment. There are defining points in one's business or life journey where you really step outside of your comfort zone and you start stretching. So when I'm hearing you say you have a software company, you kind of glaze over that very casually, but let's just speak to that because like you said, you didn't finish college, right? I'm guessing you don't have a technical degree. So how does one without a college education or technical education, and I don't think you code, right? That's not like a
No,
thing
I
that
have
you do.
not. No,
Okay.
zero coding knowledge.
So how did you then start a software company where you're like, hey, this is what people need. I'm gonna put a SaaS together or a service as software. Um, how did that even start? Did you learn from someone? Did you team up with a partner?
No,
Yeah.
no. I mean, so and now that company in the beginning, yes, I did have several business partners, but my business partners didn't know how to code either. Yeah, right. We started that business in alignment for several different reasons. Outside of that, but since then I've bought out all my partners, and I own that company solely now today. But still to this point, yeah, I don't know a damn thing when it comes to software engineering, coding, any of that. But what I do know is like, okay, I'm a system user. Yeah, right. Like I'm a power system user. So I know, and this is where the team creates great alignment is, okay, I know what the end user wants because
Mm,
that's me. And that's been the world I've been living in for 20 years. Yeah, right. So what's interesting about like with my software, not only am I the owner of it, but I'm also like our biggest client. Yeah, right. So we're using
mm,
it every day, day in and day out to build our own real estate business, when it comes there. So, then from there, it's like, okay, if you have the vision of what needs to be created and what, how it needs to operate and work, I don't need to be the person building it. I just need to be the, person putting together architectural plans. And I know how to assemble teams, and I know how to go out there and sell, right. So then from there, yeah, just assembling the team and putting the team together, accordingly. And there's going to be a lot, in your entrepreneurial journey. It depends on what business that you get into. Like real estate was the easiest, meaning just building out like a real estate team or a brokerage, because pretty much every hat you're wearing that hat, as a solo agent, and then you build up, right? But in most businesses, look, you're not going to have the skill sets to where every single, do every single responsibility in that or every role in that responsibility within those roles. But then again, like if you know exactly, okay, if you're able to set the clear vision, and you're have a high level certainty in that vision, like again, because I've lived, eaten, and breathed real estate, and still to this day, all I do now, I'm not personally selling real estate anymore, but I've got my real estate team that is, yeah, and then we've got several thousand agents within the franchising company, and then with all my coaching clients, like all
mhm.
day long, all I'm doing is coaching and working directly with those that are out there selling the product. So I'm in the trenches in a way, or very close to it in a way,
Right.
where I know what their frustrations are, I know what their obstacles are, right? Like you gotta, at least for me, it's like I need to know what my avatar needs and wants and what their fears are, and what their obstacles are. And and that's also what I look at with the software. Like, okay, if I spend all my time coding, would that be a higher and better use of my time versus spending it knowing what our customer base really needs that will be impactful? And then how to use that software. Because it's one thing to build it, but then how do we use it successfully, for them to go out there and create success with that? So, but then from there, I think a lot of people don't spend, and this was a mistake that I've made for a long time too, is, it took me a long time to realize and wake up to the fact that I need to go out there and master the ability to go out there and hire the right people at the right times.
Mm,
It's funny. I spent so much time mastering client acquisition and mastering, just sales on its own front, and marketing and, all of that. But dude, I was so lackadaisical, and it was probably the most costly mistake I've ever made in business, was it took me about 10 years to wake up to the fact of, man, I need to put the same energy and attention to finding top tier talent. So, knowing how to go out there and recruit properly, knowing how to go out there and interview and test and not just hire talent, but assemble teams and lead those teams in the right way. Because I mean, if you have that skill set, then you can put together a winning team.
So love this part. Even though you didn't know anything about coding, you actually were the end user for this very product, right?
Yep.
And I think that is absolutely brilliant because you're bringing such a valuable vantage point for exactly what was needed, which is I'm the biggest client. You said I'm the owner, but I'm also the biggest user, which is even better. So even for anyone listening right now who you're like, I don't even know what to create or maybe what the next project is, what is it that's missing? Maybe from what you're doing now that you wish your industry had, or hey, if there was this thing, it would make my life so much easier as a blank. And even if you don't know anything about coding or that industry, this is what Josh was talking about. Go hire those people. That's
Yep.
exactly what you need to do. I love that. All right. So switching gears just a little bit because it is called the ultimate life. So I think business, your ambition, your drive, your hunger and thirst for making a positive impact in the world is one thing. And then switching gears, you're also a dad and a husband, right? So talk to me a little bit about how not really balance it all because often when I'm coaching, and you know this, Josh, I don't know if there's such a thing as the balance of it, the 50-50, as there is a harmony, right? So how do you combine your drive and ambition, but also not neglect the importance of being a great husband and being there for your three growing kids? So maybe the mindset a little bit of how did you navigate the growth and then also a growing family?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like all things, it's constant work, right? I know it's easy to look on social media and think everybody's got their quote unquote together, but I've
Yeah.
never met a human being that actually has their together, whatever the hell that means. I think perfectionism is a hologram, right? Like all we're trying to do is just do the
Mm,
best that we possibly can with the tools that we have. And, but if you look at like my overall personal philosophy with this, okay, what do most parents go out there and do? They abandon their goals, dreams, and visions. So then that way they can maybe provide a better environment for their kids. So their kids have an opportunity to go after their goals, dreams, and visions. Well, I've learned that just like in business, just like with your staff, with your people, they don't and kids are the same. They don't listen to what you say. They mimic what you do. Right. So, it's funny. I just did a podcast on this with my business partner in our health and fitness. We have a supplement company and, he's a biochemist, an professional bodybuilder. But we were talking about, leading like as head of family, head of households, with mom and dads, like how to create healthy kids. Because if you look at type 2 diabetes, I mean, it's increasing by hundreds of percent year over year. By like 2030, it'll be up 700% from where it is today. So, you know, um, but with that, it's like, look, I don't sit there and, push on my kids per se on exactly what they need to be eating, what they need to be doing. Like I'm not like a tyrant where it's like, okay, this is, but then from there, it's like, okay, I know by leading by example and the power of leading by example. Now I'll educate them and then they can make their own decisions from there. Right. I'll educate them on why they might want to eat these foods versus these foods, what it can mean to them. But I'm going to lead by example doing it. Well, then it just so happens to be every one of my kids has a friggin' six pack. Yeah, right. Like they're all like, like like yeah, pretty much, trained consistently with my, 10-year-old just turned 11. But that dude today, man, like if I show you a picture of me, he's got friggin' pecs, he's got abs, he's, but it's self-initiated, right?
right, right.
That's on his own stuff, man, right? Through that. So going back to that of, okay, I know I'm very, very certain in the fact that if I sacrifice my goals and dreams and visions that I had before I had kids, right? So it's like, okay, like when people are like, oh, well, so define that, well, you're a father, okay, yeah, that's the season of my life that, I'm in right now where, yeah, I do happen to have kids, but I was also me before I had kids. I was also me before I got married, right? So think about, okay, what are my goals, dreams, and visions that I have for me in my life? And those will change over time, but if my kids don't see me working my ass off to go after my goals, dreams, and visions, the probability of them chasing their goals and dreams and visions is very low, right? Because then
Mm,
they'll be faced with that same situation and be like, oh, well, our mom and dad sacrificed their goals, dreams, and visions to provide for their kids. They went out there and accepted the job that they didn't want. They went out there and did, right? Like, I don't want my kid, like, man, I might succeed, I might fail, but my kids won't ever see me like not going after what I want. right? And I'm okay with them watching me fail. I'm okay with them watching me struggle. I'm okay with all of that, right? And so that's, kind of high level, philosophy from there. And then when it comes to, like you mentioned with balance, look, there's seasons, man. There's seasons where, I'm able to spend more family time. Then there's, so an example, I was with one of my mentors in LA when all the COVID lockdowns took place. And so I didn't even know everything was shut down because like we were, together, like at a retreat, phones off, like no internet, So then that Sunday night, I'm in LAX. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I hear about,
Oh, wow.
shutdowns and, so first thing I did though is, went and had a conversation with my family the next morning. I'm like, hey guys, look, there's a great chance you're not going to see me for a while. Here's what's going on. Now we've got a lot of companies, we've got a lot of employees, a lot of people that rely on us. They have their families, they have their kids. Like I'm going to do everything I possibly can, not just to ensure that our family makes it through this, but then those, families
Mm,
that choose to be a part of us, that they make it through this, and this is going to be, it's going to be extremely hard on me, but it's probably going to be harder on you. But I need, it's like just having those conversations, and it's not easy by any means, but I think, just that ongoing communication and I mean, kids are smart, dude. Like not treating your kids as a kid, right? Like, having those
yeah.
internal conversations. And then from there, when it comes to schedule, it's like, look, I have found that you can have it all, but you just can't have everything. Right. So
Mm,
meaning that you can achieve the things that matter most to you in life. You know, um, may not be able to have it all. Right. Like, okay, I can't have the six pack and then eat all my favorite foods all day long either. Right. But I can, the things that matter most to you. So I found, okay, when it comes to, family, when it comes to health, when it comes to business, none of those things to be sacrificed, but I might have to sacrifice pretty much everything else.
mm,
Yeah, right? So, like, okay, like,
yeah.
I might sacrifice and this is where I get very clear on what matters most to me. I know for a fact on my deathbed, when I'm rolling back the tapes in life, I will not be like, "Oh, shit, wish I would have went to more happy hours with the boys." But I will, regret not spending time with my kids or not taking care of my health or not going out there and have the impact that I can on business. So I'm very clear on, okay, what are the sacrifices I'm willing to make? What are the sacrifices I'm not willing to make? So hey, I know the four components of life that are most powerful and important to me, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything else, including social life, including those other things.
And I thank you so much for adding that caveat that, and I want to speak to something you said about kids as well, because being a newer mom, now Bo, as of this recording, will be about 16, 17 months. So my life has drastically changed since you and I started working together because I was still single, not married, just starting the business. So to your point of seasons, I absolutely get that. But what I'm hearing from you is success equals sacrifice. And I think even just accepting that philosophy, and it's not a negative thing, it's just the reality that if you want to succeed in anything, there will be sacrifice. To your point of you can have it all that matters to you, but not have everything. So yeah, you could have the six pack if that's what matters to you, but you can't also just eat a bunch of Krispy Kreme donuts and Taco Bell all day long. That's just the equation doesn't work, right? So there is a sacrifice, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. But I think accepting that philosophy that there will be certain aspects that must be sacrificed, um, is what will create that success. Now, the thing about kids that you mentioned, and I really appreciate your story about how you wrangled the crew and you sat them down and said, hey, you're not going to see me for a while. And here is why. There's other families also attached to what we do. So I'm going to ensure that we as a family are going to get through the season, but we also want to make sure that they as a family will get through that season. And I obviously I'm not one of your kiddos, but I can imagine watching dad or mom sit us down, have that serious conversation, and feel like I am a part of what they're doing. That's what's special about that, right? Because by you talking to them, I almost felt like, oh yeah, they're part of the troop. Like they're part of the GSD mode crew that's going to help ensure these family success. It's just that the significant role they play perhaps is supporting you, being understanding of maybe why you have to be away for a little bit. But again, you communicated it to them and it made them feel like they're a part of the success journey versus, oh, there's dad again pursuing what he wants to do, leaving us alone in the dark. And what you're saying is, no, 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 you're a part of this, but this is the role I kind of need you to play so I can do what I need to do. Am I understanding that right? Because that's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, yeah. And we've, look at entrepreneurship. Look, you have times where things are good and you got times where it's hard. Like I said, there's different seasons, and some of those seasons are our allocation. Some of those seasons are also financial, you know, so then it's same having those conversations. Hey guys, right now, like we don't have the means to go out there and do this. We don't have the means to eat out or do these special things that maybe they're accustomed to doing. Here's why. And when I come to this, like, look, dude, I'm sure my kids at some point will blame me for screwing up 1,000 different ways. Right. So I'm not trying to portray that, I'm winning some Father of the Year award, by any means. But when you just, the hard part, I was actually talking to my mom the other day. And I was like, look, it's funny how the different cycles of your life. I'm like, when you're, a young kid, you put your parents on these pedestals, think they have all the answers. And then you get in your teenage or, late teens, early 20s, and you go into this kind of blame phase of, my parents did this wrong or this wrong or this wrong. And then then you have kids, it's like, I remember there being a time, oh, I'll never do that with my kids, what my parents did, right. And then you have kids and like, oh, I get it. I understand it. And then you get to a certain age where you realize, dude, like there is no playbook. Right. We're all just human beings trying to do the best that we can, give our kids maybe more knowledge in a better environment and a better starting point than maybe we had, with that. So like, I'm not going to pretend to have, all of the answers, just again, doing the best that I possibly can. And I've just learned through, like, if I'm trying to facilitate a change through anybody, right. Leading by example is the best way that I found to do that.
Yeah.
So leading through example, but then having those conversations. And I have a rule with my kids of, dude, if you're old enough to ask the question, you're old enough to get the answer. So I might have certain conversations that other parents might cringe if they look at you from afar with that. But I'm like, but yeah, having those conversations and not trying to, like, when I'm, because I mean, look, even up till recent, with what we're going through economically and whatnot, and operating multiple different businesses. It's like, look, I got several businesses doing extremely well. I have several other businesses that are getting murdered and get kicked in the teeth that are having to go out there and save. And, so I'm not going to hide that. And I'm not going to hide, like, I'm not ashamed of the fact that, like, when we need to retract financially, or, if I got to, if we're going through a struggle, it's just, hey, let's talk about it. Here's what's up. Here's what's going on. Yeah. Right. Through those situations and just being upfront about it. I don't, I don't think insulating them and protecting them does any good. But again, I could be wrong. So I might be giving you guys all the worst parenting advice on the planet. I don't know.
No parenting advice given. I appreciate your perspective. And that's really what I want to get from all of this, is again, how you think, right? The mindset, diving deep into your own internal processing as someone who is seen as a high performer, also high thriving family life, by no means perfect. Cause I love what you said here. Perfection is a hologram. So y'all don't get fooled by social media. Those nice Christmas and Easter photos, there's a lot of drama probably behind the scenes on all of those. But three more things I just want to hit on before we bounce off today. And again, this will be the first, I'm sure, of many conversations with you because there's so much we could dive into. But you mentioned just struggles in the economy, struggles in business. So what helps you stay in a growth and positive oriented focus in your mindset when you're going through these struggles? Because financial, let's say, decline or leanness or even just debt seems to be something that causes so much anxiety and stress amongst people in general, but especially for business owners. So how are you thinking through seasons like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a few things there and look, I don't know. It's because it's, for such a long time, I struggled financially, period of time growing up on food stamps, and, I've had to live in my car for, 2 weeks out of my life. And, and just, figuring out how to make that, like, I'm not afraid to lose it all. I've never been, to me, I don't allow money to define me. I understand my relationship with money is yes, it is a necessary resource in the monetary system that we exist amongst, at least for now. That might change in our lifetime, with the
Yes.
amount of global debt and but we'll see. But anyway, is that right now? Okay, yeah, it's a necessary resource to go out there and operate and experience life. So I respect it. I understand that it's a tool to go out there and be used, but it's not my God. Right. So then from there, it's like, look, I don't allow the house I live in or the cars that I drive or what my bank balance is to define who I am as a human being. Like, I know who I am as a human being, So then from there, like I'll run through kind of mind experiments. Okay. Like what's the worst case scenario? Cause I get asked this a lot of, how do you take so many big risks? I'm like, I assess
Mm.
what's worst case scenario. Okay. Worst case scenario, I lose everything. Right. Well, and we have to go rent a studio apartment. Me, my 3 kids, my wife, our 2 dogs in a studio apartment. I'm like, everybody's healthy. We still love each other. Like life, worst case scenario, like life is still pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, so for me, so that's number one. I don't allow that to define me because I think that, it can become such an ego blow for people. And they start to feel like a loser, or whatever during, because you're going to experience hardships, right? Like it's going to happen, right? Unless you're playing it safe and staying, in your own level of mediocrity. But if you're wanting to push and go big, and try to build $1 billion portfolio like I am, like, okay, you're going to have to take some risks and you're going to have to go big. And for me, I look at this at the end of the day as like, hey, look, I might die, extremely wealthy. I might die extremely broke, but I'm not going to die like knowing I didn't do everything I possibly could to go after what I wanted. Right. Like, so whatever the outcome is, I really don't give, which I know sounds terrible, but I just know that I'm going for it. Right. But then from there, and this might sound odd and weird until you go through these yourself, but the biggest growth moments I've ever experienced, I've never really grown from succeeding. I've grown from failing. It's like the great Napoleon Hill said, or repeats throughout Think and Grow Rich and Conversation with the Devil is your amount of success will be in direct proportion to the amount of temporary defeats you experience. So I don't look at
Mm.
it as none of these are failures, right? They're just temporary defeats, temporary challenges. And I understand that it's that pain that those struggles, that pain, and again, it's going to be different things you're going to have. Because look, I found that growing pains can be worse than slow pains. Right. But the pain
Mm.
and those struggles are what facilitate the growth. And that's truly what forges you into the next better version of yourself when you come out the other end of that pain. So the biggest growth moments I've ever had have been have followed the biggest hardships I've ever had. So
Interesting.
then it almost, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm sadistic here, because it's like
Right.
I get
I
to a
see where you're
point where I
going.
look forward
Yeah.
to the next pain and the next challenge. Not that
Mm.
it's fun going through it, but I know that I'm man on the other end of this. Like, who's the next version of Joshua Smith that I'm going to see, and what is
Mm.
that going to look like, and what's that going to allow me to metamorphosize again into, So I think I just have allowed myself to adopt a different relationship with it
Yeah.
than maybe others that do struggle with it. So I have a very
Yeah.
positive relationship with it, even though it sucks like hell going through it. Just like, okay, when I step into the gym and kick my freaking ass, yeah, it's painful. It sucks. But I know what comes out of that. So I enjoy the hell out of it.
And it just takes experience, right? Because it's the only reason you know that is because you've gone to the gym enough times and consistently over time, and you've seen the results over time. So you know, okay, it's not going to be after one workout or two, but when I consistently do this over and over and over again, I'll see the results. And because that's so ingrained in your mindset, right? You do something, it creates this neural pathway. You do something, it creates this neural pathway. So the brain goes, remember, every time we do this, this is what happens. And almost at one point, it's very difficult to get yourself there. Then at a different season of your life, over doing it so consistently, it's almost subconscious now, right? I'm sure the guy you are today versus who you were 20 years ago, gosh, almost night and day for you.
Yeah. And a big part of it too, when I said the relationship, I think that at least for me, in my observation of most, and I could be wrong on this, but I used to think freedom was, okay, once you get to a certain amount of money, that's going to create true freedom. And I've discovered that that's not the case, right? Like you think you own something. Okay. Try not paying your tax bill on that and see how long you own it. Right. See how quick, like, and all your assets can be stripped from you like that. Right. You get out of line, you step on the wrong toes, you piss off the wrong people in power. Like, all your assets can be gone to, so over time I discovered that true freedom is not caring about others' opinions.
Mm.
And at least I think that most people have so much fear of taking those risks, or when these are coming into place of thinking about, well, what are other people going to think? And they create this prison around themselves of other people's opinions. Like, and this took a lot of work, but got to the point where I could give two about other people's opinions of me. Like, again, I know who I am. I know what I'm doing, right? And when I say I know what I'm doing, okay, there's a lot of things I don't know what I'm doing, but what I mean by is like chasing my goals, dreams, and visions. I know why I'm doing it. And there's going to be certain people that are, that are supporters, and there's going to be the more success that you create, the more haters and naysayers you're going to have anyway. So I don't, so when you detach that from that, because that also stifles a lot of fear, a lot of concern, and a lot of progression is just that concern of what other people's opinions are of you.
Yeah. All right, cool. Last two things. And then I'll let you get back to your day because I know you're a busy guy. But a quick one. Any favorite books, podcasts, resources that have just been a game changer for you that you would highly recommend?
Yeah. And this is always a tough one. I don't really listen to
I know.
podcasts, so I'm bad with podcasts. But when it comes to books, thinking, I mean, I'm a big believer in the classics, Think and Grow
Mm-hmm.
Rich. I think that
Yep.
everybody not should just read that, but use that as a true playbook. Mistake that I made for a lot of years was, reading the whole, an average CEO reads a book a week, so you start stacking these books a weeks, but then, a year later you go look at that book and you can't remember what's inside of it. So, for me, I found that, okay, the book a week isn't, so instead of reading 52 books a year, like, let me identify the 4 or 5 books I'm going to read a dozen times that year. So, that book, when you really break it down, and I know because of essence of time, I'm not going to, you guys probably all know the backstory of that book, but don't just use it as a book, like use it as a playbook, like study it, memorize it, follow the exercises. That book is extremely, extremely powerful. One that, and this is actually one that you recommended to me that I have probably, read or listened to now, I don't know, maybe 30 plus times, because again, I'm one that takes a lot of repetition to really master this stuff. But I re-listen to it every quarter now because I'm always like, how am I doing? Am I getting better?
Mm.
But it's Conversations with the Masters by Anthony DeMello.
Mm.
Yeah, right. When it comes to just learning how to detach, um, um, and detach from labels and allow yourself to go through and enjoy and get out of the different experiences that we're having in life. Like, okay, I'm not depressed. I'm just experiencing depression in this moment. How can I navigate this as an observer? What can I learn lessons from that? Like, that book has been so massively impactful, for me, just to be that observer and to be able to have those growth moments, whether due to sunshine or it's raining, right? Those different storms of
Yeah.
life, that allows me to, it's just allowed me to put things into perspective where I can maximize the growth out of that moment.
Beautiful. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and Conversation with the Masters by Anthony DeMello.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one because I probably never hear anybody recommend that. So to somebody, that's a new one for sure. So thank you for that. That's a
Yeah. When that
classic.
came from you, you told me to read that. I don't know how many years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Probably. It was a
Yep.
minute. Beautiful. All right, my last question, and this one is kind of a gift, if you will, to whoever's listening right now, that often you hear change your questions, change your life. And so what is a productive, powerful, positive question, primary question that you now ask yourself that maybe you didn't used to ask before, but that has helped you move forward, stay focused, and keep growing in all the different areas of your life?
Yeah. So, and I have 2 of them. One comes first, the second one follows it. Now, the questions that I used to ask myself before I went on the success journey, that led to a lot of pain and victimhood, and was what a lot of people do is why. Why is this happening to me? Why is this taking place? I don't know why does crime exist? Why is the world corrupt? Why are the taxes so
Mm,
high? Why did I lose this job? Why'd they do this to me? Why'd they, right? So instead of going the blame game, right? And this comes down to acceptance of, okay, I can't control the economy. It's going to be what it is. Right. All I can control is I can control what the things that I can control. So my 2 questions are this is always, how, right? So how am I going to make my goals a reality regardless of the situation? So thinking of it like almost like a poker player, like you don't choose your hand, like you play the cards that you're dealt regardless of the hand, right? And you play it like it's the hand that you wanted, right? So, okay, right now we're going through probably the most challenging real estate market that anybody that's alive today has
mm,
experienced when it comes to real estate professionals, right? Okay, well, I'm not going to bitch and moan about the market. Why is this taking place? Why is the Fed doing what they're doing? Why is the DOJ suing NAR? Why is, right? It's, hey, here's the reality of the situation, right? The market's out of my control. How do I best go out there and play this hand to make my goals a reality regardless of the situation? Then immediately, then I follow that by the who. Okay, who do I need to reach out to
mm.
so I don't have to go out there and reinvent the wheel? Like like once I figure out what I need to do, my next question, right, immediately after that, who do I need to reach out to? Right? Who's the savage in this space? right? I'm not going to go out there and exhaust years or, thousands of hours trying to figure out how to go out there and do it. I'm going to go out there and be like, who's the best person in this space that I can reach out to help me fast forward the success trajectory on this thing.
So how am I going to make my goals a reality regardless of the situation? So really just focusing on what you can control. And once you know that, the second is, all right, who is the savage that I need to work with
Yeah.
to leverage and accelerate my rate there so that you're not wasting time trying to learn something that you really don't need to learn.
Yeah. And with
Cool.
that, I've been very intentional for, let's just say, the last probably 16, 17 years of building my Rolodex, AKA my contacts and my cell phone, but build my Rolodex. So I always have that who in my phone, right? And not just who I need to reach out to help solve any problem that I need to solve, but to make sure that they'll answer my phone call when I call. Yeah, right.
Ah,
And that's very intentional of, okay, who are the mentors that I need in different aspects of my life? And what do I need to do to provide massive value to them in their life? So if and when I need them and their knowledge and whatnot. Like, not only do I know the person to talk to, but then, okay, they'll answer my damn phone call and they'll want to help me.
so this is also you investing in these relationships intentionally. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. And I'm
Oh,
not thinking about when I'm doing, oh, I'm going to get something from, but it's just, okay, like,
right.
what can I do to go add value to their life? There's a lot of people that I've done that with that, are mentors of mine that I haven't had to ask for help yet. And when I say asking for help, I'm not looking for anybody to ever give me money or, right. Just like, okay, there's going to be maybe that someday of like, who do I want to get in my Rolodex that at some point, if I'm in a bind and I need their expertise of all the thousands and thousands of hours that they've, mastered their craft and their mind on, if I need them, they're willing not just to, not only do I have their contact information, but they're willing to answer the phone and they want to go out of their way to help me because I've made such an impact in their life.
Awesome. Awesome, Josh. All right, my man. Last message for this conversation. What is it that you would just tell to that really driven, ambitious entrepreneur right now who is, got a really busy family life, their mindset's all over the place. They want to live their ultimate life, both in business and family, but they're just so overwhelmed. Any last words for them of encouragement, support, advice? I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, don't listen to social media. Don't listen to what society tells you. You know, everybody will tell you, you seek balance. Right? You get the wrong messages. Right. There's no reason that you can't make all the things that need to happen that are most important to you. But as I mentioned earlier, yeah, you can have all the things that matter most to you, but you can't have it all. So success didn't come without sacrifice. Just get very clear on what are the things you're willing to sacrifice and what are the things that you aren't willing to sacrifice, right? And then just go out there and make it happen. Just put in the work. And yeah, it's a challenge, but life is hard and it's supposed to be hard. It's not supposed to be easy. I know life has gotten so easy that people think that it's supposed to be, but it's not, right? Any element of success that you want to go out there and create is going to take hard work. It's going to take sacrifice. But just, as Camille always says, pick your hard.
Exactly. Exactly. All right, my man. I appreciate you so much. And for those of you listening, if you want to work with Josh, find out about the software, the coaching program, I'm going to put all of his contact information, all of his handles in the show notes, wherever you're watching this. But Josh, really, I appreciate you so much, my man. This means a lot. And I'll definitely have you back on for future conversations.
Yeah.
Thanks,
It's
brother.
been an honor, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Peace.